Let's just be honest for a second. Vaccines, they're one of the biggest public health wins in human history. I mean, they've saved an unbelievable number of lives. But here's the thing. They've worked so well that the diseases they prevent have kind of faded from our collective memory. And that has totally shifted our focus to a new and really important question. How do we actually know vaccines are safe? So in this explainer, we're going to tackle that question head on. We're taking a completely transparent look at the science, the history, and the systems that are designed to protect all of us.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to explore this fascinating idea called the vaccine safety paradox. It really gets to the heart of why we're even having this conversation today. Then, we're going to be real about the history of actual documented vaccine risks, because yes, they have happened. From there, we'll dive into the big questions you've probably heard floating around. And finally, we'll look at the systems that monitor safety right now, so you can see what goes into making a truly informed choice.
So, why is vaccine safety such a huge topic right now? I mean, really, why now? Well, the answer is in this kind of ironic concept known as the vaccine safety paradox. Just think about it like this. A few generations ago, the danger from diseases like polio or measles was incredibly real. I mean, it was right there, in your community. The main concern was, just trying to avoid the disease. But today, thanks to vaccines, those diseases are really rare. So as the risk from the disease plummets, it's only natural that our focus shifts to the small but not zero risk of the vaccine itself. You could almost say vaccines are a victim of their own incredible success.
Now, to have an honest conversation, we have to acknowledge something right up front. No vaccine, no medicine at all is 100% risk-free. And building trust means being transparent about that. So let's actually look at the historical record, because there have been real issues, and understanding how they were handled is absolutely critical.
The scientific community doesn't just sweep these things under the rug, it investigates them. Back in '76, a swine flu vaccine was linked to a rare neurological disorder. In the '80s, the oral polio vaccine was found to cause very rare cases of paralysis, and there were also some real concerns about reactions to the pertussis vaccine. Then in the '90s, the first rotavirus vaccine was linked to a serious bowel problem. These weren't just rumors. These were real, documented events that demanded action.
But the crucial part of this story is what happened next. Every single one of these discoveries led to a direct improvement. That older DTP vaccine, it was replaced with a much, much safer version. Here in the US, we switched from the live oral polio vaccine to an inactivated one that simply can't cause the disease. And that first rotavirus vaccine, it was pulled right off the market. This is the scientific process working exactly the way it should. You identify a risk, you learn from it, and you make the next generation of vaccines even safer.
So that history of constant improvement brings us right to the big questions people have today. Let's dig into some of the most common concerns and really separate the scientific facts from the fiction that's out there. All right, this is probably the biggest, most persistent question out there. It's caused an enormous amount of stress and anxiety for parents, so it's really vital that we look directly at what the evidence actually says.
So this whole concern started with one single, very small study back in 1998 that has since been completely and totally retracted. The author was found to have used fraudulent data, and he even lost his medical license over it. Since then, dozens of massive, high-quality studies, we're talking studies involving millions of children, have found absolutely no link between vaccines and autism. We've also learned so much more, like that the key biological markers for autism actually develop in the womb long before a child gets their first shot.
Okay, the next big question is all about the schedule. You look at the number of vaccines today and wonder, is that just too much for a small child's immune system to handle all at once?
Well, the science on this is very, very clear. A child's immune system is incredibly powerful. I mean, from the moment they are born, they're exposed to thousands of foreign substances, they're called antigens, every single day. Just from breathing, eating, touching stuff. The number of antigens in the entire childhood vaccine schedule is just a tiny, tiny drop in that ocean. And get this, thanks to modern science, today's vaccines have far fewer antigens than the ones used decades ago. There is simply zero evidence that vaccines weaken the immune system.
This is a really common and honestly understandable question. If getting sick from a disease gives you immunity, isn't that a more natural and therefore a better way to go?
It is true. Surviving a disease like measles can give you powerful, lifelong immunity. But that immunity comes at a potentially devastating price. The price could be permanent hearing loss, brain damage, paralysis, or even death. A vaccine, on the other hand, teaches your immune system the exact same lesson, how to recognize and fight off that virus, but it does it safely, without you ever having to risk the life-threatening consequences of the actual illness. It's all of the benefit with none of the terrifying gamble.
So after tackling some of those specific concerns, let's pull back the curtain a bit and look at the systems that are working right now, 24/7, to ensure vaccine safety.
Before any vaccine even gets close to your doctor's office, it goes through years of incredibly intense testing. Phase 1 starts really small, focusing purely on safety. Phase 2 expands to hundreds of people to figure out effectiveness and the right dosage. Phase 3 involves thousands of people, confirming both safety and effectiveness on a massive scale. But here's the critical part. The process doesn't just stop at approval. The fourth and longest phase is constant monitoring after it's released to the public.
A huge part of that ongoing monitoring is a system called VAERS. The easiest way to think about it is like a national smoke detector for vaccine safety. Anyone, a doctor, a patient, a parent, can report any health problem that happens after a vaccination, no matter how minor it seems. The whole goal is to cast this incredibly wide net to catch any unexpected pattern that might signal a potential issue that's worth looking into more closely.
Now, this is maybe the single most critical thing to understand about VAERS. It's a signal detection system. It is not a list of proven side effects. Think about it. If millions of people get a vaccine on a Tuesday, some of them are, just by coincidence, going to have a heart attack or get in a car accident or sprain their ankle on Wednesday. All of that can be reported to VAERS. The system is designed to collect all of that raw data so that scientists can then do the really hard work of figuring out what's a real side effect versus what's just a coincidence.
Okay, so where does all of this leave us? What do we do with all this information? It really all comes down to one thing: making an informed choice based on solid information and having open conversations.
Your single best resource in this journey is your healthcare provider. Seriously, they can have a real conversation with you about the specific risks and the specific benefits for your family. And it is absolutely okay to have questions. A good doctor will listen to you and answer them. But it's also vital to remember that choosing not to vaccinate isn't a no-risk option. It's just a different choice with a different set of risks, both for your child and for everybody else in your community.
And that risk is not just theoretical. Just look at this number, 22.8. One study found that children whose parents refused the whooping cough vaccine were nearly 23 times more likely to actually get whooping cough. That's a really stark, data-driven example of the real-world impact of this choice.
And that really brings us to our final and most thought-provoking question. The entire conversation around vaccination ultimately rests on this one tension. How do we, as a society, balance the right of an individual to make a personal health choice with the collective need to protect the entire community, especially its most vulnerable members? There is no easy answer here, but starting with a shared understanding of the science is, without a doubt, the most important first step we can take.